So there's lots you can do with a monoprint, and there's lots of different ways you can experiment on any kind of surface using various methods and techniques. But basically, there are two broad main methods. The first is the additive method, where you paint onto a surface with an ink or paint and then print that off. I'll show how that works. Or there's a subtractive method where you have a ready inked surface and you draw into that surface and then you print from that. I'll also show how that works in due course. This church is an example of the additive method. This second church is an example of the subtractive method. This is also the subtractive method, where I have removed from a ready inked surface. So I'm using here like a sheet of rubber, like plasticky rubber. You can use glass or anything plastic, anything that won't absorb the ink straight away. So the ink sits on the surface. Just blocking in the design with a marker pen. That's the advantage of with the additive method of monoprinting. You can just draw onto your sheet, indicating roughly where the blacks are going to go. Just the outline for blocking in where you'll be putting your blacks. Since the whole point with the additive method is you have a blank plastic sheet with no ink on it. It's just wiped clean, and then you're gonna go in with the ink where you want your design, the blacks of your design to be. I only had permanent marker, but if you've got a water-based marker, that's even better, so you don't have to worry about cleaning the plastic sheet after you've finished with your monoprint. So you don't want to make the drawing too fussy or anything. You just want to, you can't be that precise with ink that dries quick. If you're using a water-based ink like I am here. So you're just roughly blocking in the template of your drawing for going in with the printing ink. And that's the nice thing about additive method, whereas the reductive methods, you got to get the drawing right straight away. So just going in with the printing ink, quick and loose, because as I said, you don't have much time with the drying time. This ink I'm using dries very fast. You can get slow at drying, and of course you can use an oil-based ink, but with oil-based printing inks, if you get like slightly thicker application than that comes through on the print, it's going to take literally months to dry. So I prefer a more fluid water-based ink over the thicker oil-based printing inks, because it's really tough to draw with them to begin with, because they are thick. They're not designed for this kind of work at all. So I'm just basically blocking in the kind of shadow areas where I want the darks to be, and obviously the unpainted on areas will be the light areas on the print. It'll be the white of the paper. So already the ink is drawn. The ink is drying on this, and you'll see in the final print that there's areas where the darks don't print so heavy because the ink's already kind of dried. But you can use that technically to an advantage. If the more you practice with monoprinting, you can calibrate it so that you have like heavier darks and lighter darks to create various effects, and it's good for things like aerial perspective. So once you've drawn the design on the plate, on the rubber sheet, you want to quickly move to the printing stage. Because my ink dries so quick, I have to use a slightly damp paper So I slightly dampen the paper with a sponge before laying it over the sheet. You can see the paper looks a bit grotty and damp. I'm not keeping the highest standard here because I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. So with a slightly damp sheet, you lay it over you can align it more precise. I just kind of threw it over the top, but you can cut the margins down. And then you have the barren, and then you rub it all over, pressing it down, and then that will lift off the impression, as you can see. Now, because the monoprint I'm doing here is really nothing special, it's just something I'm doing for demonstration purposes. Just quickly demonstrating how you can add a second layer onto the print. Adding a color layer here. And the advantage again with the additive is because I used the permanent mark and I've got my original drawing, I still have the guides, so I know where I put the blacks the last time round. And if I'm working here, just basically put some kind of ground on the painting, like a coloured base to give it some, just to improve it and create some kind of a better sense of depth and form to the print. So I'm just basically the ground area, the floor at the base of the trays. I'm putting in a yellow colour, basically a yellow slightly mixed with a bit of black to create a kind of slightly olivish green, just because it's the only actual colour I have at the minute in terms of a printing ink. You could use acrylic if you want. It's not so fast drying that you won't be able to do it. So, but I'm just using the printing ink I had, and then I'm just reinforcing a bit more the blacks. And if I feel that certain areas printed too light, or the blacks didn't come through strong enough, so I just put a bit of black back into it. And this is the result that came from this demonstration. This is the exact print I made, and you can see the second yellow layer helped to give a kind of depth and just some more interest to the design. And the blacks were slightly reinforced in areas, and it generally improved the image, I'd say. And then I also done another one just for my own curiosity, just to try and use more of a pure yellow rather than mixing it with the black, and that also came out not bad, I'd say. So with this method, which is the subtractive method, you have a fully inked up sheet, inked up using a roller, and then you want to draw the design into the ink so that what's drawn in comes out as the light part of the image. So it's the white of the paper, and obviously the black that remains is the makes up the blacks or the darks. It's, in my opinion, a much more difficult method to use because you can't really do any under or preparation drawing, and you have to go straight in quite confidently and with some degree of boldness, because you really don't have, it's very difficult to make corrections using this method as well. It gets kind of messy if you start trying to correct, like to re-black lines that have been drawn in. And you want to keep fussiness in that respect to quite a minimum. As you can see, I'm using a fork because I like the prong of a fork. It gives a slightly thicker line than you get from using, say, a biro with no ink, although you can use that as well. And you can kind of be more freer with something like a stylus or an empty ballpoint pen. you can also, because with a fork, as I'm doing here, you can also just put it on its side and use the flat edge of one of the prongs to clear out spaces, and those cleared spaces will be the white areas, just the paper in the print itself. And having something like that is essential if for instance, you want to do like a sky area, which you need to clear out quite a bit of space. If you want to just put some larger highlights in various places and whatnot. It can get very messy doing that. I'm just being very loose here. But it's something you can experiment with. It's quite nice to experiment with. And this is the result of the subtractive monoprint. It didn't come out too great, not thrilled with it or anything, but it gives an idea of the technique and how it differs from the additive method. And one thing I like to experiment with is using alcohol markers to put some colour into a print. Because I'm not thrilled with the black and white print as it came out, I'm not bothered about experimenting with it. So it's an advantage of water-based inks is because they dry very quick. You can kind of skim the alcohol marker across the image without smudging the black ink. You just don't want to press too hard, but it can be quite effective, and it can be used to experiment and give you a sense of the design if you wanted to develop a monoprint with a series of colour layers using printing ink, or you can just do a final image using the alcohol markers.